to the entertainment Talking Sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another football video. And usually, of course, I do New York Giants related videos. But a lot of times my subscribers ask me to think outside the box and try to come up with some broad content. And I was watching the XFL product this weekend. Obviously, I did a stream on it as the New York Guardians got their first win. And I'll be the first to say I was very skeptical of this league. I'm still skeptical if this league could last long term. We'll have to wait and see. We've obviously seen leagues try to do this in the past, whether it's the Arena League, the USFL, the AAF, the XFL the first time around. The AAF didn't even last a full year. The XFL failed after one season. The Arena League had some moderate success, and as did the USFL, but none of them last long term, and none of these leagues that they bring in will ever supplant the NFL. The NFL is way too big, it's way too powerful, it's way too popular to ever be supplanted. But that does not mean that there may not be a alternate league in the offseason that diehard football fans, that people are not big fans of basketball or not big fans of hockey may get into. And I will say, it is getting rave reviews, and for the first time I watched the product because I worked on Saturday, I was pretty impressed with the XFL. Now, there are some rule changes that I think are far-fetched and will never be initiated into the NFL, and I'll go over all of them, and some things like the camera access. When they go into the huddle and you hear what they're talking about, that will never be in the NFL. The way that they interview players and coaches after touchdowns, I don't think that'll ever be brought into the NFL. Maybe occasionally, because I will say this. As crazy as the XFL was the first time around, we all remember the names on the back, He Hate Me, or and the rule for the coin toss at the beginning of the game where they basically fought for the football like a dog to see who came up with the possession to start the game. Those things kind of delegitimized the league. It made it look corny. It made it look like they were trying way too hard. This league, although there is definitely some outside-the-box thinking, was much more professional. It was definitely a much improved product from the last time around that Vince McMahon tried to get this off the ground. I will say that for sure, but that doesn't mean it will succeed. I think it will, at least for a few years. I don't think this will fold up like the AAF because of the money that it has behind it, and it seems as if the fans were pretty impressed with the product. It had glowing reviews by several people on Twitter, on ESPN, everything else, and I was pretty impressed. Now, there were some corny things, the guy with the Xbox controller looking over plays, things like that, up in the booth, but it was still pretty cool to see all the behind-the-scenes access. Now, in terms of the rule changes, some of them are very outside the box. The double forward pass would never carry over in the NFL. Basically, what the double forward pass is as long as the first pass is behind the line of scrimmage. So, for instance, a screen pass to a running back or a wide receiver, they could then throw a second ball down the field. Where in the NFL, you could do that if it's a backwards lateral. It does not have to be a backwards lateral in this league. As long as the initial pass is behind the line of scrimmage, you could throw a double pass. I don't think the NFL would ever adopt that. The overtime rules, I don't think the NFL would ever adopt. Basically, what the overtime rules are, it's a shootout, much like hockey in the regular season or soccer. After you play an overtime period, there's a shootout. Now, one thing I think the NFL could look to initiate into the league is the college overtime rules. I think the college overtime rules are a big improvement over what the NFL currently has. And the NFL, to their credit, has been able to, they've made several rule changes over the years, the overtime rule being one of them. Obviously, the way it used to be is if you kick a field goal, the game's over. To make it fairer, they said for the team that gets the ball first has to score a touchdown in order to win the game. If they only kick a field goal, you get a second opportunity. The team that kicked off gets an opportunity to try to match them or win the game. They've made a number of changes, though. Like I said, the force out rule, it used to be that you didn't need 2 feet down. If a guy forced you out, it was considered a completion. That since has changed, along with a bunch of other things. The replay rule, obviously the 2 challenges, bringing things in to the challenge world, like the pass interference this year, which I thought was a good idea initially. I think they completely botched it because now whenever a team challenges, they never win, and they're basically wasting a timeout. So that's something they will have to look to readjust in the offseason, along with a number of other things. They've changed over the course of the year. So it's not like the NFL has not been flexible. Another thing I want to give the XFL credit for initially, when it first came in, that the NFL took from them, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right on this. When the XFL first started, they had the cameras that were above the field of play. Now, you don't see this in every game, I don't think, in the NFL, but you do see it in the primetime games, whether it's the Sunday night game, the Monday night game. They did adopt that camera angle where it's on a track. I may not be the biggest fan of it, but the NFL did take some ideas from the XFL originally. And I could see them doing the same thing this time around. And the rule change that makes the most sense to me for the NFL to look into is the kickoff rule. The NFL has played a heavy focus on concussions. Not because I think they really care about the players at the end of the day, although I would like to think that they do. I think they care about the money in their pockets, and they know they will get sued if things continue to come out, and players will look not to play the sport. When you see things like the CTE, the brain damage that are done to players like Junior Seau and Aaron Hernandez. Of course, that great documentary just came out on Hernandez, and at one point they showed the brain damage that happened to him caused from the NFL. Not that I'm making excuses for him doing what he did, but regardless, there is scientific evidence that concussions in the NFL change players' lives during and after the sport, which is why the NFL has paid heavy focus trying to, add padding to the helmets, things like that. And the kickoff rule was something that they changed due in large part to that. Basically, all the NFL did was they moved the kickoff up from the 30 to the 35-yard line, making it less likely for the team to return it, which obviously a lot of concussions occur on kickoffs when teams are running, full force, full speed, and they're colliding. And I'm sure that cut down on the concussions. I don't have the statistics in front of me, but it only makes sense because there's been much less kick returns. By doing that, though, to me, at least as a football fan, I think one of the most entertaining parts of the game was the kickoff. But I am fully for trying to cut down on concussions, so I've never been outspoken against this. But what the XFL has done here, in my opinion, has really found the best of both worlds if this works out long term. Now, the new rule that it's been initiated is you kick off from the 35, but the team starts from the opponent's 35, but they can't move until the team, fields the kick. So once the kick returner grabs it, that's when they can start to move forward. Otherwise, it's a false start, and you re-kick it, and you do it over again. By doing that, you're definitely going to cut down on concussions because you're not getting that collision. In the NFL, when a team kicks off, they're blocked, 10 yards down the field or whatever, and once they get past that, it is free reign. Here, they're being blocked at the 30 or the 25-yard line, whatever it may be, and you're not going to get that full speed collision like you did with the NFL, and you still get when players return the kick. I do think that it adds to safety. I think it also opens up more big plays. Being that most kick returns are not fielded anymore, they either go out of the end zone or they kneel in the end zone and they take it at the 25. This would open up for more big plays. It would have a higher incentive for teams to return the kick, things like that. Now kickers would probably still kick it out of the end zone unless you moved it back to the 30. But I think there would be more entertaining plays and there'd be more excitement in the league. And I think it's one rule change. Out of all the rule changes, that is the one that I think could potentially be adopted by the NFL. Now, whether or not they will do this, who knows? But I think it makes a lot of sense. And I wanted to get into what some of the experts and some, people in the media thought about the rule changes and what they thought about the product as a whole. So let's jump into some of the quotes. The first guy I wanted to bring up for you guys was Colin Cowherd. Colin Cowherd, of course, a very outspoken guy on ESPN. The XFL has had a nice opening weekend. Easy watch. Like hearing the coaches. Kickoff rule is smart. Lots of talented football players in America. One of these football leagues is going to work. My bet is this one. #XFL. And that was another thing I did bring it up. And I was entertained by it. The in-huddle access, the interviews on the sideline. I found it entertaining. And maybe, I don't know about the huddles, but maybe the interviews on the sideline to a small capacity could be adopted in the NFL. I don't think they would ever take it as far as the XFL did. But for a viewer standpoint, some of it I found was pretty entertaining. Like I said, I don't think the NFL will adopt most of those ideas. But, like I said, Cowherd is on board with the kickoff return. I agree. I think it's very smart. Next thing I wanted to bring up was Fernando Ramirez, who I believe works for the Tampa Bay Bucks. I could be mistaken on that, but I found this quote on a Tampa Bay Bucks, basically what's equivalent to Giants Wire. Vince McMahon and the XFL might be onto something here. The kicker is at the 35-yard line, but the kickoff team is at the opposing 35-yard line and can't move until the returner catches the ball. This is to prevent collisions. Wonder if the NFL would adopt #XFL 2020. And I'm with him, man. I think if there was one rule change that makes the most sense from this league and that adds to entertainment, that adds to more excitement, bigger plays, I think this is it. And I think the NFL should at least consider bringing this in. And when you think about some great players over the years, Deion Sanders, Devin Hester. Devin Hester was probably the greatest kick returner of all time. Players like that now are outdated. A guy like Tyreek Hill, for example, could you imagine how much more effective he could potentially be if you initiated this type of rule into the NFL and how much more exciting it would be? It would bring players like that, they bring a lot more value to the table. A guy like a Cordell Patterson when he first came into the league, guys like that, because of the new rule, even though I fully agree with it because you're cutting down on concussions, which at the end of the day should be the goal, would have a bigger value in the league, and I think they would certainly agree to this. Corey Coleman with the Giants last year. We saw what he did in the kick return game. So I think this is one rule that the NFL, if they were to adopt it, it may be the right decision. I know a lot of people might laugh at the XFL, but I am a firm believer in always trying to adapt and improve your product. And to the NFL's credit, they are very flexible. And over the course of the years, like I said, there's been a number of rule changes since I've been watching the sport. And most of them they get right. I thought the force-out rule was a good idea. The challenge rule, I think, is a good idea. It completely changed the sport. Sometimes they get it wrong, but a lot of times they get it right. And I think if they did adopt this, it could be the right decision. I think it would bring back the importance of the kickoff return. But at the same time, you're cutting down on concussions. So I thought it was a really cool idea. I like the XFL overall as a product. If you haven't watched it, I'd suggest maybe give it a try if you're a diehard football fan kind of waiting for baseball. But I enjoyed it, and as always, guys, if you like what you watch, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.